We'll give some quick remarks first, and we'll go to the mic and take one question.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Today, Prime Minister Mark Carney and I made significant progress towards reaching an agreement on a West Coast pipeline and carbon pricing that will protect Alberta ratepayers and businesses and result in hundreds of billions of dollars in new investment in the Alberta and Canadian economies. There's, of course, still some work that needs to be done to get to the finish line and to ensure the interests of Albertans and our industries are properly protected. But I am now much more confident that this will be completed well before Alberta's West Coast pipeline submission to the Major Projects Office next month. You also heard my comments at the Canada Strong and Free conference, so happy to take any questions.
Hi, Premier. Laura Osmond with The Logic. I wanted to start by asking you about what changed. You said you went into that meeting not feeling so optimistic. So what changed over the course of that conversation, and where is the daylight still between the positions of Alberta and Ottawa?
Well, we'll be able to be a little bit more forthright about, you'll be able to see once the agreement is completed where some of the additional measures needed to be fleshed out. I think there was just the big issue, we knew it would be, is we agreed in the MOU to a $130 price, and the question was, how quickly do we get there in the environment that we're in? Now, that's always been really at the heart of the discussions, and so I think we had a meeting of the minds today on a few of the outstanding issues, and I hope to have something more firm to announce very, very soon.
Bonjour, Madame Smith. Christian Noël avec Radio-Canada. With the federal announcement today, do you feel you have all the cards you need? Is it enough to attract a private proponent for that pipeline?
Well, we have a couple more steps first. We have to finish the work of submitting our proposal to the Major Projects Office. We were evaluating 5 different routes, and so that one will map out what we were considering and also the preferred route. We also have had all of the major pipeline companies at the table advising us on this, and our anticipation would be that, yes, once it is submitted, once there's a positive indication that we'll be able to move ahead, that we will have significant private sector proponents behind it. These kinds of massive projects can only be built with the private sector. And I said from the very beginning that if the only way to get major projects like this built is for them to be nationalized or government run, that'll be a failure of the exercise. What we're all trying to do is to attract private capital back so that we can make sure that we have these kinds of projects constructed.
So Cormac McSweeney with City News. So to clarify, when you submit in June, you won't have a private sector proponent attached. And then my question would be, will you support a public inquiry into the alleged electoral list leak, as 38 Alberta professors have also urged?
Well, let me answer the first one. A private sector proponent won't come forward until they have some certainty that it will get built. We got caught on this because TC Energy had put in billions of dollars to help build Keystone XL, and the presidential permit got pulled. Enbridge had put in billions of dollars on Northern Gateway, and then the approvals got pulled. Energy East had already spent $1 billion on a regulatory approval pipeline before pulling the plug because they couldn't see a pathway to completion. So the precondition to getting a private sector proponent is they have to have reasonable certainty that the federal government, the BC government, us, First Nations are aligned so that the project will get built. So don't be surprised that there isn't somebody coming forward yet on the submission, but in order to get it built, there will have to be a private sector proponent who will build it, or a consortium of them. I think people need to understand about the data breach in Alberta. These are Elections Alberta lists that they make available to political parties. They seed those lists so they know which list goes to which party. They have identified the Republican Party as the source of this list, and they have also commenced activities to to ensure that the 568 people who have been identified as having accessed it are going to cease and desist. Though the process is working, we are encouraged by that. They also have the power under the Public Inquiries Act to compel testimony and to get to the bottom of it. And we believe that they need to be allowed to do their work. This is the reason we have independent commissioners empowered in this way, so that when they find evidence of wrongdoing, they can do the investigation, solve the breach, and then make determinations on what the penalties will be, if any. And we do not, as politicians, want to interfere in that process. If we interfere in that process, it could prevent the people who are responsible from being held accountable, and we want them held accountable. There is also an RCMP investigation going on because there's some indication that this may have also breached several criminal code provisions. And we do not want to interfere in the RCMP doing that for the same reason. They have to be held accountable. So at some future point, we may want to do a review of whether there needs to be any changes to the legislation to ensure that the investigative arm has all the powers that they need and all the resources that they need to do these kinds of investigations, but not right in the middle of an investigation. So I would just park that until these investigations are complete, and then we'll see what comes out of it.
Wally Tamtam with the Western Standard. Yesterday, Naheed Nenshi made some remarks saying that you would never get higher security clearance because you have, quote, proven yourself to be a foreign agent. He then said he hoped you wouldn't share the information you received through that clearance with the independence movement leadership. Could you please comment on those remarks and the accusations made by the leader? And of course, what's your message to Albertans that are growing impatient after your meeting with Mark Carney?
Well, he's becoming increasingly unhinged. I think people are seeing that, and the antics that he's engaging in, where he simply just makes things up and doesn't tell the truth, it's really damaging his credibility. I do, in fact, have top secret status, and I will, in fact, be getting a briefing from CSIS because it's my job. Our province is a major energy producer in the world, and we have the potential to be a target from all kinds of bad actors. And to protect my people and my industry, I need to be fully apprised of what's going on. And so that's what I'm going to do. And I would hope that the leader of the official opposition would be a lot more constructive and a lot more truthful when he takes the mic next time.
Hi, Premier Stephanie Taylor, National Post. From Alberta's perspective, how many years, even roughly, would you consider it to be reasonable to reach that effective minimum price of $130 per tonne? And what kind of compromise are you asking or seeking from the federal government in order to get Alberta to sign off on that timeline?
Well, I would say that the Prime Minister and I both went into the discussions not looking for a compromise, but looking for a win-win. And I think we have to level set on where we were. As I mentioned, we were looking at a $170 carbon price by 2030, which was completely unachievable. We were looking at emissions caps that would have shut in production. We were looking at net zero power regs, which would have prevented any investment in our natural gas power grid and impaired our ability to attract investment for AI data centers. So we have already seen a number of win-wins by seeing many of those laws addressed. When it comes to the time frame, again, it's just one of those judgment calls. We had differences of opinion about how quickly we could move and the impact that it would have on the energy sector, and we found that we got closer today to a point where we both feel, I think, pretty confident that we'll be able to get to a deal.
Can you quantify from Alberta's perspective, like how many years are you looking?
You'll see. I mean, you'll see when the deal gets signed and we're able to reveal it. We will give full details on that, and so you'll be able to see.
Hi, Annie Bergeron-Oliver with CTV National News. In your speech today, you said that a final agreement is necessary to show Albertans that Canada can work. Do you believe that a final agreement is necessary to quell some of the separatist movement in your province? And if you don't get a deal in the next coming days as you want, then what? What are the consequences?
Well, I've always taken the independence movement very seriously. From the moment I talked to Prime Minister Mark Carney about it, and remember, he was in the UK at the time that Brexit was not taken as seriously by political leaders, and it ended up going in a way that was unexpected at that time. And I don't want that to happen. I want I know that there are people who are frustrated, disappointed, given up. And it's my job, and I think he sees it as his job, to make the case about how we can work through these differences. I think that we'll never agree 100% on everything, but we have to demonstrate that cooperative federalism works, that in areas of provincial jurisdiction we get to assert that we can do things our own way. In areas of joint jurisdiction, we have to be able to find ways to get to a win-win. And I think this is going to be really important. We do ask Albertans how they feel about the MOU, very high level of support for it. We've asked them, do you want us to keep working at getting to a deal? They say yes. But we have also seen that the level of people saying that they're frustrated, that they doubt that we'll get a pipeline built. That's also increased. And with it, the number of people who say that they'd be prepared to vote for independence. We don't want that. We want to go the other direction. So I think that the Prime Minister is motivated. I am certainly motivated. And then we just have to keep on identifying those issues that have caused friction and work through them one by one. And I'm committed to doing that, and I think the Prime Minister is as well.
Hello, Premier Smith. Alexa Lavoie for Rebel News. What is your response to the Cenovus CEO saying Canada is no longer competitive in the oil and gas sector and blaming the federal government for it? And Mark Carney's reaction that it's not true.
I would say that we do have a higher cost to develop our resources than other jurisdictions. When you're on tidewater, it's just and don't have to build extensive pipelines across vast territories. You just do have a lower cost. That's part of the reason our Western Canada Select is discounted, is that you have to take into account the cost to get it to market. That being said, what we are hearing from our trading partners is with the uncertainty caused by the conflict in the Strait of Hormuz, they actually want to diversify their suppliers for their own certainty and guarantees. Will they be prepared to pay a premium for that? I think they will. And that's what we're going to see. I think that the uncertainty that has been caused and the disruption that has been caused, and in some markets, the potential for shortages, I think that has really caused a lot of our trading partners to look at Alberta and look at Canada and say, can you be part of our answer? So we will always be a higher cost basin. Yes, carbon prices will make us slightly higher cost than other jurisdictions, but we're trying to land the price at a level where it's not going to make an enormous difference in those investment decisions. Some of the previous framework would have, but I think we're going to try to land on a place where, yeah, it'll be an additional cost, but we think we'll still be able to attract that investment for the reasons I said. Thanks.
2-3 more questions.
Yep.
Good afternoon, Premier Smith. Tamara Leach with Rebel News. During the Freedom Convoy, subsidized media coordinated to discredit Canadians concerned about pandemic policies. Now, some of these same outlets claim Russia is influencing Alberta's independence movement. Do you see this as another attempt to discredit grassroots movements, and are you concerned about the pattern of dismissing voices advocating for freedom and democracy?
Well, I can tell you we took a bit of a different approach in Alberta when I came in, because I believe in choice of people on their medical decisions, and we believe in free speech. We think that Albertans are smart enough to be able to look at a number of different viewpoints and figure things out. And I know that there has been one report on this, but I can tell you my public safety minister has been in touch with the RCMP, and he read their statement in the legislature last week saying that there is no credible evidence that we're seeing any state actors who are interfering in our politics. But that's part of the reason why I want to get the top secret status, so that I can be assured that that is going to remain the case. And if there are threats, that I'm prepared with my team to be able to deal with it.
Alex Ballingall at the Toronto Star. You sound pretty confident there is a deal coming on the MOU. I think you said when the deal gets signed at some point. So do we basically have a deal at this point? And on pathways, what should we expect on that? Will there be like a timeline for construction if there is a deal on this MOU?
Well, you may have noticed this morning I said if a deal gets signed, and afterwards I said when a deal gets signed. So that is an indication of my improved level of confidence after talking through some of the areas that we found that were of disagreement. Pathways is the next step. There's still a couple more agreements we have to come to. Let's remember where we're at. We came to an agreement on net zero power regs being put in abeyance. We came to an agreement on eliminating the emissions cap. We came to an agreement on methane. We've come to an agreement on them transferring the approval process to our province when it comes to major projects. We signed that a couple of weeks ago. We've developed our 120-day time frame for approvals. We still have work to do on getting a framework for adding nuclear to the grid, which we are committed to doing by January 2027. And, of course, this carbon pricing deal, which is a prerequisite to going into the discussions with Pathways. We knew from the beginning that there's a linkage between getting this new pipeline to the West Coast and doing so in a way that was the least carbon-intensive barrel for heavy oil on the planet, and doing so requires the investment in some of this emissions reduction technology. And you'll see the framework for how we think we're going to get there once we just hammer out a few final details on the MOU, and then the discussions with the Pathways Group will continue after that. And I hope they don't take too long, because Pathways also needs to have the certainty so that they can go to their boards of directors and start planning for how we're going to increase production. So I would say that this framework is pretty essential before we begin that conversation.
We just have time for one more. So one more.
Good afternoon, Premier Kate McKenna from CBC News. I'm wondering if you and the Prime Minister spoke about the federal proposals to speed up the approval process for major projects, including a proposed streamlining of the process for pipeline approval, and what you think of what's being discussed.
Well, I hope we see that, because I think the Major Projects Office was a bit of an overlay on a process that's not working. And we've seen this elsewhere. We saw it in the United States with their Energy Dominance Council. That was sort of a recognition that not having some kind of navigation process to go through all of the multiple agencies that could say no, and no one seemed to have the power to say yes. I think that's what the Major Projects Office is about. But you have to also then change the underlying legislation so that you're not so that we don't end up being in a situation where the only way to get a project built is to get it on the major projects list. We have to improve the investment climate. So we've offered a model. We've put forward our 120-day approval process for energy once the environmental and Indigenous consultation is done. And we hope that that becomes the kind of accelerated timeline that we'll see the federal government adopt to.
That's all the time we have. Thank you, everybody.
From Quebec, one more. Sam?
Up to you. We have a few other pre-existing interviews. I'm sorry. Thank you.